Hello, everybody. My name is Jack Dangermond, and I want to start by saying thank you very much for inviting me to speak at your fall symposium conference here. This theme that you focused on, creating a more equitable and sustainable future, is amazing. And I want to acknowledge all of those people who came up with this theme and are driving in this direction. You are an amazing group of people. You as geographic professionals, people who really specialize in applying geographic thinking and applying geographic science to various causes, are creating a different future. It's not exactly inevitable, but I believe strongly in this future. You come from many backgrounds, different disciplines, and some in academy and some in professional practices, some in government and so on. But together, you represent a kind of force of action which I think will emerge and create a better future. Your work is already addressing so many challenges, and particularly in the area of social and racial equity and also sustainability. I have so many examples to share, but also your work cuts right across almost every segment of society. I would say it underpins the way that the world is actually being run. A few examples of this I'd like to share at the beginning of this session because they are so distinguished. Some of you are working on environmental assessment at the global scale and also right down to little microgeographies. You're looking at not only what's happening, but also what could happen, nurturing aquaculture, nurturing restoration of forest habitats, planning for and implementing sustainable agriculture. These are powerful things that are occurring, and they rest on the power of geographic science and its application. Some of you are working on conservation assessment. These examples are amazing. Let me point out the one in the upper left in the Po Valley in the northern part of Italy, developing a regional conservation planning activity. And also just studying things like human-elephant conflict in Zambia, showing not only what's going on, but also how to address the issues of conservation here and managing ecosystems. And the examples go on and on. In the urban space, our users of geographic science are doing urban design and urban planning, creating more sustainable cities like the Brandenburg region in Germany on the right, or doing urban redevelopment in Paris, developing whole new communities and visualizing ongoing development projects so that people can get engaged and they can see what's going on at multiple scales. The whole new world of advanced game engines and visualization of these are opening up cities and proposals for new cities in whole new ways. They're allowing us to see, or people to see and visualize what might be. These examples here showing from Europe what might be in the day or in the evening are not only engaging, but they're showing people how their future might be. People are collaborating and opening up the planning process in multiple ways. This is also happening systematically in transportation planning and management, whether it be from airports to shipping to real-time traffic monitoring to analyzing bus riderships and those who are included or excluded from participating in various public transit activities. In the world of building and facility management in campuses, geography is playing a major role. The very same concepts of relationships and patterns and processes are being applied to look at workspaces, particularly at this time of COVID, bringing people back to office, spacing them out properly. Look at this interesting map in Switzerland at CERN, which has completely built a digital model for their entire campus. But also just asset management and walking directions on campus. Geography is having a major play. It exists in water and utility work and energy work, which is not only using geography as a foundation for managing their assets and outages, but look at these amazing things happening on the right. I work with about 90% of the utilities here in North America, and they're all working on renewable energy, solar, wind, etc., and integrating it into their grids. And similarly in telecommunication, moving from traditional telecommunication to 4G and now 5G. And some of you are working on the idea of modeling broadband coverage and showing the digital divide, showing assessments of what's covered and what's not, and directing investments in the right places with a new infrastructure bill coming on. In the world of public safety and emergency management, geography, your work, is letting us not only see patterns of crime, but also address them, looking at real-time monitoring and also where to locate policing activities or public safety activities in emergency management, looking at patterns of security, both in micro areas in schools, but also monitoring global security risk at an international level. Almost no disaster today happens without geographic information, preparation, and response in the area of severe weather, in the area of fire here that we're facing on the West Coast, in flooding, and the whole idea of sea level rise. What will happen as a practice, and how will cities be more resilient? In the world of census and demographics and statistical, GIS has played such a major role, for example, in the 2020 census, not only in the US, but in the Philippines and various countries in Africa and Europe. It's actually not only managing the counts, but also managing the actual census. And look at the interesting results that we're now seeing. Not only population changes here in the US, but population migrations that are occurring from poor countries to rich countries up through Libya, for example, and into Europe. And look at the amazing maps in the far right, lower right, showing the voting behavior and also looking at redistricting modeling that geography and GIS really underpin. In the world of business analysis, almost no major business here in North America is operating without GIS and analytics and for economic development and optimizing work, whether it be from optimizing delivery routes like FedEx and UPS to the idea of looking at assessments for insurance of multiple hazards. And also here, this world is opening up for things like understanding better the financial household resilience in New York City, for example, in the lower right. It's amazing the kind of insights that geography is providing for people in the private sector. We have all been affected by COVID, and the mapping and visualization of COVID and response to it through everything from the Johns Hopkins map in the upper left, which has now been looked at, I think it's 2.2 trillion times, to the idea of monitoring change across Europe, picking the right sites for vaccination and testing, to just basic analytics of what's going on. GIS, geography, has totally revolutionized the whole field of healthcare and epidemiology, and it's just actually beginning. In the world of social equity, the topic of this particular conference and seminar series, there are so many maps that tell so many stories. The lingering effects of redlining ongoing in current times, the ability to look at accessibility of different public facilities, like whether it be post office or health facilities or parks, or equity planning of everything from trails to urban development and housing. It's amazing what's occurring. I want to move from these examples to share a vision. It's really your vision of geography at 2050, and share some thoughts about not only creating a sustainable and equitable future, but also how technology and how your science will underpin the strategies that make it so difficult to achieve this sustainability currently. There was a very famous book published this year by Mario Palma from Mexico. He was one of the founders of INEGI, the great statistical organization and mapping organization in Mexico. He first said, the lack of understanding of our reality is one of the greatest risks that our society is facing. And this, for geographers, sings music. It certainly did to me. Later in his book, he outlined this point. The future depends upon creating and applying that understanding. And you, as scientists and technologists and applied geographers, on so many fronts know this to be true, that we must fight for the notion of creating understanding and applying understanding in effective ways, in believable ways, fighting off the whole notion of false news that is plaguing our country and our world in these troubled times. Our world is complex, and it's a highly interdependent ecosystem. This is clear, and it's rapidly changing and evolving. And the world that we live in, frankly, is not well known. We like to think that it's well known, but it's not. It's fragile. It's rich in biodiversity, and as we are all aware, it's increasingly dominated by human activities. Some geologists are beginning to call this the Anthropocene epoch, because the human footprint is dominating at this particular point in time. Our world clearly is being challenged because humans are living recklessly and unsustainably, and it's threatening our future. The issues of human-induced climate change, together with overpopulation, are driving so many other effects. The idea of resource shortages, severe drought, water crisis, massive migration. These are all interrelated factors. And we are collectively beginning to realize that we need to take far more responsibility as a society, as a collective, for the future in the evolution of our planet. Creating a sustainable future and also an equitable future is possible, but there are many things to do. And we must act now. These are a few examples, whether it be in creating sustainable land use patterns, lowering greenhouse emissions, decarbonizing energy, creating affordable and equitable housing, providing access to things, being able to combat racism as a total population. We need, ladies and gentlemen, to apply our best science, our best technology, and also our best creative thinking to address these big issues. And this is all possible, which is amazing. And your field, geography, geographic thinking, will be essential to be able to envelop these solutions and address them. Sustainability, and I would argue also creating an equitable society, starts with needing to see the world as a single system. And geography provides the science and language to do exactly that, organizing and integrating all the factors, whether they be environmental systems or factors like ecosystem services or water or biodiversity, or economic factors, industrialization, infrastructure, financial systems, with social systems, housing, welfare, population, equity, and equality all fall into spatial domains. Not only can geography organize and integrate the factors, it allows us to illuminate the patterns, to discover relationships between these different layers, as I like to organize them in my mind. And also this science, your science, provides a framework for understanding and then, of course, applying all of this knowledge. I'm beginning to call this, and like to call this, the geographic approach. All of this knowledge, bringing it all together, enables the geographic approach. What is the geographic approach? It's a way of thinking, many of you know it well, and problem solving that integrates geographic sciences and information into how we understand and how we manage micro areas, but also our entire planet. This approach is holistic, it's science-based, it integrates all the factors. It is collaborative in so many ways. It is built on the whole concept of spatial understanding that's ubiquitous among humans. It's geoscience and understanding. And it supports a multiple objective approach, an inclusive approach, a multidisciplinary process that's impacting virtually every sector of our society. And for all of you practitioners, I want you just to note this moment, because I believe at this particular time and this particular conference, we are marking a point in time when this geographic approach is beginning to be understood at a massive scale. The geographic approach integrates and supports powerful methodologies. And again, these are familiar to many of you. Starting with GeoAnalytics, which is about creating insights and understanding. It's also about geovisualization, the mapping of our world, the communication of content in such a way that people can really understand it immediately. The idea of geodesign, which is about designing a sustainable and inclusive future, designing cities, designing transportation systems, designing approaches for conservation, or designing approaches for weeding out difficult situations that are facing us. The spatial approach is underpinning it all. And geocollaboration, engaging all of the different stakeholders in particular problems. And finally, geoaccounting. Geoaccounting is a concept, a new concept for some of you, but actually it's an old concept. Like spreadsheets have modernized accounting, things like GIS are transforming how we account for all the factors that really matter. And all of this supports the vision of more comprehensive and sustainable planning and decision-making and engineering and operations. This goes everywhere. And I think the geographic approach is critical for maintaining sustainability and building a more equitable future. Now, in the modern age, technology is pretty exciting. And GIS is what geographers use to be able to build on this idea of a geographic approach. In many ways, it's enabling it. It allows us to bring all of our measurements together spatially and manage them. It allows us to visualize and see them, map them, communicate. It allows us to model and make predictions and do various forms of analytics, AI, machine learning, and so on. It allows us to design and plan a better future built on that understanding. And finally, it allows us to apply it systematically to decision-making, to action of various types. This is a process and a framework which is underway in so many organizations. It's still evolving, coming together, but as I see it, it's a massive framework that allows us to create a more equitable and sustainable future. GIS professionals are already applying it, and many of you here in this audience are applying this geographic approach, creating solutions for a more sustainable future. Things like preserving natural areas, improving transit, creating more efficiencies, developing resilient and equitable solutions for just about everything. However, the footprints that are here today, while giving us the evidence, don't solve the bigger problem yet. We need to grow this, and this is where you come in. We need to grow this exponentially. The technology, the field that I work in, is advancing rapidly, leveraging and integrating many innovations, whether it be startups in Silicon Valley or massive IT organizations, cloud providers, and so on. These technology advancements are all coming together, helping us scale up our collective efforts with cloud and distributed computing, integrating imagery, real-time information, and so on. GIS itself is also becoming interconnected. The marvelous environment of cloud computing and the internet with web services has meant that our different individual applications and individual efforts are becoming shared with collective information bodies, and people are beginning to use and reuse their work, sharing common base maps and imagery, for example, but also thematic information across the entire society. We're seeing shared services begin to emerge as a pattern of application. I like to call this geospatial infrastructure, and I'll assert that it's a new GIS pattern. It isn't the desktop or the server or even the cloud and web services. It's an interconnection of shared services through open portals that allow interconnection of this knowledge and feeding it into apps for everyone. And this is a transformational step, and it is starting to transform organizations like cities, like the whole city of Abu Dhabi or the whole city of New York or the whole city of Los Angeles. But it also, I think, will extend beyond that to interconnect and provide an approach, an infrastructure approach for whole nations and ultimately the world. This geospatial infrastructure is actually expanding very rapidly. I enjoy a unique position in watching my users. There's about 10 million of them. They're all working, they're not all working on it yet, but they're certainly beginning to interconnect and share this environment. And they're supporting applications from little local geographies to global applications like the UN SDGs and dozens like them. Tens of millions of data sets are now openly being shared as services, and they're making billions of maps a day that reach like a third of the world's population. This is interesting. I would say it's a new kind of information system model, and it's geography that's at the heart of it. I'll assert that it's a kind of nervous system for sustainability, and also it will become a nervous system for reporting equity and letting us see and do geoaccounting about it. It starts with being able to integrate in virtually any kind of distributed information, imagery data, map data, textured meshes, CAD data, BIM models, unstructured data, and normalize it into geo-referenced layers of information for use in various applications. The applications range from high-end, powerful desktop apps, and there are millions of them now being fed by these web services, to massive deployments of the nature of mobile. iPhones, Android devices are supporting the idea of data collection in the field, to the idea of managing workers in the field geographically. And then there's, of course, the pervasive web apps. I mean, the COVID map, for example, that made 2.2 trillion maps is probably a world record, but it reached so many people with geographic news, the geographic story about what was happening today or this hour with COVID around the world. This, I think, is beginning to affect society's understanding of and perception of how the world is interrelated, and geography is at the heart and center of it. These technologies are also becoming embedded in other technologies. This diagram shows exactly what's happening with web maps, empowering vendors like Salesforce and Adobe, Amazon, Microsoft, Autodesk. And in each of these cases, they are transforming the actual workflows and approaches within these other traditionally stovepipe systems. Geography is impacting non-geographers in so many ways, extending and creating this language of understanding. And at the high end, advanced GeoAnalytics are creating new insights and new understandings with predictive modeling, real-time visualization, analytics, the ability to store and access big data and bring it right into the geographic environment, being able to look at imagery and raster information in the cloud, and then, of course, perform these interesting applications of GeoAI, the AI and machine learning, deep learning applications. This is leveraging many other IT applications and scientific innovations, but together geography is bringing it into focus. New forms of spatial analysis and data science are pushing at the edge to reach new applications. And hitting on a couple of those, for me, GeoAI is making some real progress today in making GIS smarter. And it's doing this by integrating with the huge initiatives going on in the open science community, bringing some of that stuff into the geographic plane to look at classification of imagery, being able to do cluster analysis, and so on. The applications are just beginning, but they're very real and they're very practical. They will both automate how we look at geography processing, but also they'll make things smarter. We'll be able to do smarter things geographically, integrating this kind of knowledge into our things like suitability analysis and so on. Geoaccounting is a term that I introduced to you earlier. It's all about being able to account for all the things that people really care about geographically. And dashboards are one of the major ways that people see this kind of accounting. We all know spreadsheets for doing accounting, and the discipline of accounting dates back 100 years. But being able to see it spatially, things like the SDG accounting by country of changes for all whether it be gender equality or forest loss or water usage. This is going to open again the world's eyes up like the coronavirus visualization did, so that people are aware of what's going on. It's going to create understanding in real time, anywhere, on any device. And real-time visualization is also coming online fast. Being able to wire up the IoT to the spatial frame means our maps suddenly become dynamic. In reporting to management, we're not only reporting the status, but the real-time status. And this kind of technology is all about ingestion of this kind of information and understanding how to analyze it, not only visualize it, but analyze what it means. And there are all kinds of workflows that will touch many of the work segments that some of you do. Just in time delivery, just in time alerting, like when an ambulance is just nearing the hospital, people are alerted and it sends out the gurneys to pick up whatever it is that is underway in this ambulance. Well, again, think creatively, and I know many of you are already doing this. Big data integration is another huge technology emerging today, being able to spatialize the big data lakes and data warehouses of information that are being collectively built through transactional systems. Imagery, for example, real-time IoT, being able to bring that right into the web frame or the desktop frame for query and analytics is going to offer whole new understanding and new forms of analytics to address the big problems that we're facing. I mentioned imagery and remote sensing. There has never been a year like this last year when imagery of all types were able to be brought into these geographic frames with GIS. Imagery base maps, of course, that's been an old one, but oriented imagery, motion imagery, point cloud visualization, and then being able to exploit it with AI and machine learning and do raster analytics and modeling right up in the cloud, not just on the desktop, but this together with the massive amount of sensing that's actually going on from satellites and drones is going to be extraordinary. Again, framing all of this technology with the kind of challenges that we're being faced, I'll again just pause for a moment and say this is an amazing time for geographers because it means being able to equip geographic thinking and geographic approaches with all of this will, I think positively all the time, I think will change the dire situation that we're facing on many fronts. Let me just share one of these that my colleagues and I have been working on that deals with the ability in 7 days to calculate at 10-meter resolution global land cover. This was built on Sentinel data, the European satellite, and using AI and machine learning, a new approach, working with our partnership in one of the cloud providers, Microsoft, and our partners at National Geographic Society. We were able to train this imagery, several years of imagery, and come up with a 2020 frame. And our intention is to be able to take this forward, doing it annually and even quarterly, so that we can actually see what's happening from a perspective at 10 meters for the entire planet. At the other end of the scale, we're seeing the innovation of textured meshes. These are really 3D point clouds, you might say, but actually they're a textured mesh because the pictures are on all sides of these clouds. And they are being merged in with vector information so that we have a combination of 3D pictures and 3D vector information, making our cities smarter. This is an example of it in Frankfurt, where we flew an aircraft, landed a few hours later, produced this amazing 3D picture of the city. And this 3D picture we were able to bring right into a GIS so that we can interact with a 3D picture, but underneath it, invisibly, is the actual vector information. I can pan and zoom. I can see the city as a picture, and I can see the most recent changes that just happened, a few hours before. And I can touch the different features, get the attribute information from them, analyze the impact, in this case, of a flood in the river, and understand effectively the city in new ways. Again, more technology, and this is the world that I live in. The last one that I want to hit on is this notion of a geospatial hub. This is again built on web services and the interconnection of people and organizations and communities through supporting geocollaboration. This allows us to organize a community, like in a city, organizing the people into different teams in a community, like volunteers. One of the most famous cities here in the West Coast is Escondido, where they got over 8,000 volunteers in the city to work on different projects in the city, like graffiti or taking care of parks or being able to deal with issues of equity and so on. They're able to provide roles by organizing around maps, organizing around initiatives. And the mayor, the leadership there, in a relatively small community, was able to just get so much more out of it. But these geohubs are also happening in big cities like Los Angeles, and also at the federal level, being able to organize relationships and collaboration relationships between different organizations like FEMA and the Red Cross, mobilizing workers. That's transformational. And why is it that geography is the foundation of this? Because it's integrative, it's intuitive, we can see it, we can analyze it spatially, and citizens and various participants just get it. Well, I've been talking about a number of issues. The world that you and I live in is being challenged on many fronts, clearly, and we need to be collectively responsible for its future. The very foundation of this fall seminar series is about that very subject. The geographic approach, this idea that we can bring things together geographically, and the technology that's emerging with the geospatial infrastructure are providing us the science and the practical means to act effectively. And while they're really exciting, they're the worlds that you and I live in all the time, they will not be enough. My sense is that to create a sustainable and equitable future, smart human beings are going to be essential. People exactly like you and the kind of work that you do. This is why I agreed immediately when John asked if I would speak here, because I think you standing up, providing the leadership, providing the problem-solving approaches, promoting geographic thinking, creating effective solutions. The AGS is a powerful organization because you're not just in this thinking about geography, you're not teaching geography, you're not doing academic research with geography, you're applying it. And you are exactly the kind of characters that need to exchange ideas and apply the right tools and going all in with urgency. I thought in closing I would also share a little bit about my organization, Esri. We have been in existence now for 51 years, and its main purpose has been to support our user community. We have about 350,000 organizations, perhaps many of you in this audience, with about 10 million users. We keep advancing GIS and the science of geography. Sometimes we refer to it as the science of where. And we're continuing to grow even in difficult times. Our work focuses on building software tools that enable our users to be able to do their work successfully or better. We also build massive amounts of content, bringing our users' content together and making it shareable and useful. We also provide lots of support for the educational community and this technical support in general. ArcGIS is our main product. It really involves three sorts of systems, supporting systems of record keeping, like parcels or census data or statistics, and then systems of insight, these are analytic systems, and then systems of engagement, being able to communicate through things like dashboards or apps or story maps to the public. We also develop billions and billions of dollars of ready-to-use content in the cloud. This is largely our users' content that we bring together, and we share it and serve it openly. There are literally, I think, over 45 million data sets that now live in our cloud, and at least half of them are openly shared. We make billions of maps like the coronavirus map every day, and these are supporting advancements in global thinking and local government thinking. They're really content about everything. From a professional development perspective, we have over 100 publications to help GIS professionals. We also provide comprehensive skills training with hundreds of free courses. Last year, our actual formal training programs trained over 500,000 people in how to do various sorts of things with technology. And much of this is open sourced knowledge that can be used and adopted not only professionally but also academically. Speaking about academic education, we have a number of programs, a school program which shares all of our software and cloud resources freely to all K through 12 schools on the planet. And we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students every year that learn geography using GIS tools. We also support over 11,000 colleges and universities with licensing of our tools in departments or for the entire campuses. Each year, we work closely with the National Geographic Society and others to support something called GIS Day, which promotes the idea of geographic learning and geo-mentoring within education. Esri has thousands of business partners formally. Some of them are quite large, and thousands of them are actually quite small startups. This is really creating a whole nervous system of innovation. In our global portfolio, we are about a $2 billion organization, but we drive about $28 billion of revenue to these innovative partners of various scales and types. We also enjoy a series of special relationships, and I've enjoyed working with the AGS for many years, but many of these here outlined are in the area of conservation and education, things that we care a great deal about. In conservation, there are similarly over 10,000 organizations that we donate and support our software to help do conservation activities at a planetary scale and all the way down to small watershed work. Let me summarize my overall talk. Our world is a single, integrated, changing ecosystem that's increasingly threatened by us. Some people have said we're living beyond our means. One of the famous people suggests that over 3 billion population, we're living beyond our means. And that's true. We're absorbing more from the world than it can sustain. To create a sustainable and equitable world, we need to take responsibility. And this really comes down especially to a message to you, applying our best science, our best tools, and also our best creativity to address these problems. Geography professionals, and many others, of course, providing leadership, doing the necessary work, and applying geographic approach at scale, and integrating geographic science and holistic things in everything that we do will be essential, creating a sustainable and an equitable future for the planet and for all of us as individuals. Thank you once again for inviting me to this conference, and I really wish you a great success in bringing everybody together around these themes that are so powerful and moving ahead. Thank you.